Greetings, true believers, and my many minions, if you will. Then again, we are all minions, right? How you doing, everybody? I'm Ed Berliner. Thanks so much for joining us. This is it, the show that I have been working for 197 years. It is finally something to have a little fun, do something real, get away from the propaganda, and get away from the bullshit. I'm sorry, did I really say that? Yes, I did, because that's exactly what this show is. Welcome to Free for All. This is where absolutely anything can be said at any time. Well, not everything can be done, of course, because we do have certain tastes that we have to worry about. But then again, there's an occasional word that will slip out. It's okay, don't worry about it. This is 60 minutes of real unfettered conversation. How nice. And we're not going to be screaming at each other for a change. Think about that for a moment. People actually gathered and we're not going to yell. Well, we could. It just really depends on whom I bring in later, if you will. You never know. Those of you watching us live across the various social media platforms, you're watching us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, which is brand new to the whole semester that we've got going, plus YouTube. If you have comments, you can go ahead and write them in the comments section of the various social media that you're watching. They do not come on live. This is not one of those shows. We're not taking phone calls. People who know me, and I've done shows for a million years, we just don't do that. But your text messages are here. We will see them. If they're good, if they're really good, we'll incorporate them. If they're not really good, then we'll just throw them out and we won't even use them. That's the way things work. So, but you have the opportunity, if you want to, on the live show, to get involved. Now, remember, if you're listening to this on an audio podcast or if you're watching this on the YouTube later when it's posted, we're not live. See, that means that you get it, all right? It's easy to say and all that, so you'll understand as we go along. My great friend later on is going to be our special guest for this, Carol Roth. She is an economist. She is an author. She's written a brand new book about the war on small business. But I have my regular panel for today, which will be rotating. And as I have told you, there is going to be one special part of the panel every single time, which we'll get to. So here we go, the debut of Free for All. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's showtime.
It's showtime! It's showtime, everybody! Showtime!
Okay, people, it's showtime!
All right, everybody, it's showtime.
All right, everybody, it's showtime.
Now take your position. It's showtime.
Hey, heads up, everybody! It's showtime!
Oh, it's time.
All right, ladies, buckle up. It's showtime.
Here we go, showtime.
Okay, fellas. Showtime.
Okay, it's showtime.
I don't know about you, but I just want to do a whole show with Patches. Rest in peace, Rip Torn, that he's gone. Showtime, everybody, and here we go. Let's go ahead and introduce my panel for today, if you will. I got to think of a different word other than panel, because quite frankly, panel sucks. That makes everybody think about CNN, MSNBC, Fox, and all the rest. It's got to be a gathering, I guess, is a whole lot better. My first is a great friend of mine. We've known each other a billion years. He is an attorney. He is a former sports agent. He knows where all the bodies are buried and all the dirt is, which makes him, I mean, if you want to put it this way, it makes him dangerous, because he really knows probably where my bodies are buried too, and one of these days he's going to tell, and he'll make no money whatsoever. It is always a pleasure to welcome Joe Casale into the show again. Hello, Joe. Good to see you again.
Hello, Ed.
You know, you do know where the bodies are buried, right?
Well, a few.
You sure? Just a few.
Well, I'd like to not have to begin this by having to answer a question that may incriminate me, but, you know.
Okay, well, then let's just say figurative.
Just say I know a little bit.
Figurative bodies. We're not talking about real bodies. Figurative bodies. Here you go. See, the attorney is always working as well. So Joe has been with me. We've done a lot of shows together.
Yes.
We've gotten in a lot of trouble together, and we'll probably do it again. And he, of course, knows all about the Hawaiian shirts, which is part of Friday. Our next guest did not know this because I did not warn him, if you will. Because the one thing that I am absolutely going to do on this show, every show, one of our panelists will be a comedian. No, that does not mean that we're having a Republican or Democratic elected official from the Senate, which really could, because those are amateurs. I mean, quite frankly, those guys and gals just make us laugh, and we shouldn't be laughing, but they're not the real comedians. We are going to have an actual professional comic in every single show, which means that, you know, I've got to learn that the one thing that you don't do is don't ever try to tell jokes with a comic. You will lose, because that's what they do for a living. So our member of the panel today who tells jokes for a living, and I'm still going to have to tell jokes occasionally, he has been working across the country for a long, long time. His son actually has done some great stuff on Twitch and some other platforms on the internet, which we'll talk about as well. But he's been on cruise ships. He's been locally. He works in South Florida, and it is a pleasure to welcome Carl Guerra into the Free for All
Hi.
today. Carl, you're the pro, man.
Thank you. Wow, pressure. No, I should be a politician. Yeah, that's pressure. Congratulations on your show. First, you've been working on this for 197 years. Your executive producer is Methuselah.
I've been doing so many shows over the years, and Joe will be the first one to tell you that this is the show that I've kind of always wanted to do because we need something like this. And it just so happens that I was watching recordings of, and again, Fox and MSNBC and CNN, and that's one of the stories that I'll talk about later, and the nonsense of the panels that go on. So I said, we're going to have some fun, and that's why we'll have a panel here, group here, the gathering here, and then Carol will go ahead and join us.
Instead of calling us a panel, call us, a couple of people I'm bullshitting with for an hour.
Okay. I like that. It's going to be, free for all, unfettered bullshit. Will be the title.
Yeah.
That'll be absolutely perfect. So
there you go. There's your title.
That's it. It's the only problem is I have to be careful of, because if you put it down in print, Facebook will bust you immediately. They'll come in and say it's hate speech. And then I'm stuck. That's another issue to get into as well. Okay, gentlemen, here's how we roll. I have in my hand a hot little marvelous, and you can see how expensive this show is, because it's the only thing I could find, the only coin I could find when I was all wired up here, so to speak, if you will. So it's a dime. I will flip the dime, and whoever wins will be able to go first. Joe, seeing as I've known you the longest, there you go. You get to make the call, heads or tails.
Tails.
Tails. Okay, there you go. Tails. Heads. Mr. Guerra, you go first. So here we go. Free for all. What's on your mind? What's the first thing getting inside your craw? What is it? Where do you want to go first?
Oh, I'm just watching just the stuff in the news, not the hardcore political stuff, just some of the lighter stuff, like the girl. Did you see the story about the girl who won the spelling bee? Zale Avant-Garde. Did you see her? She's amazing. You know what she did to win the spelling bee? She spelled her name.
She spelled it.
She won.
Wait, she spelled her name?
Zale Avant-Garde. That's her name. But she's amazing. She's 14 years old. She's only been preparing for the spelling bee for 2 years. And some of the kids that are on it have been doing it since they were in the womb, studying a book on how to spell. But she's also an amazing basketball player, and she holds the Guinness record for basketball juggling. It's amazing. She was juggling off the floor 5 basketballs at the same time. But for the Guinness record, she did like 3 balls. She's amazing.
Okay, so, but I'm going to go ahead and take you to task on this on the very first one, because, and that's where I'm going to bring Joe in on this too, because we have been in a lot of this. The spelling bee is wonderful. I love the kids. It's great to see. It's actually good to see that we have intelligence. We've got smart kids out there in America, which is frightening when you look at what's above their speed, their age. But this is not a sporting event. I mean, I don't know why, but it's just, here I am, the old man, get off my lawn. When somebody says the spelling bee, and ESPN covers it, and it's not an athletic event. It's great, it's wonderful, but I bristle every time I hear it called a sporting event. It's not.
It's a sporting event. You see the way those people sweat? Those people sweat more on that thing than half the games that they show on ESPN. Yeah, it's a sporting event. Listen, if you're showing Joey Chestnut stuffing 90 hot dogs down his throat, then you can call a spelling bee a sporting event.
Well, that's not a sporting event either. That's not. That's ridiculous.
ESPN stands for entertainment and sports. So it is entertainment, that's for sure. And it's, listen, it's pretty cool what that young lady's doing. I mean, you got a unicycle. She's on a unicycle bouncing basketballs, and she says, "I do this spelling bee thing on the side." Now that's pretty cool. Okay.
I mean, look. Wait a minute.
For only 2 years now. For only 2 years, she's been preparing.
I do this thing on the side. I mean, that's pretty cool.
I'm going to get hammered for this because somebody's going to say he doesn't like kids or something. Grumble. Nash.
Well, you don't like kids.
Well, yes. Well, wait a minute. Yes, I do. I've got 2 fuzzy kids in here, and I got 2 beautiful grandkids that I
you don't like kids. It's okay.
What do you mean?
Once you admit it, then you can get it out and let it go.
I love kids.
But you don't like kids.
I love kids. They're great when they're tied to the rear bumper. I mean, it's
Exactly. They're great when they're sleeping.
They're great when they're not spelling words you can't spell.
Well, but yeah, again, but the spelling bee, the hot dog especially. Hot dog is not a competition. That's not a sport. Joey Chestnut is not an athlete. He's a fat guy in a thin body. Come on, I mean, and look at that. But they don't even eat the hot dogs. What do? They take the hot dogs, they eat them, they do ingest.
They put water on them too.
They put water on them.
Worse than putting ketchup on a hot dog.
That's not a hot dog.
I mean, it's awful.
Give me a hot dog, and then what does he do? I know how these competitive eating guys do this. They go back and they throw up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They hang out with Paris Hilton.
Not like we didn't throw up on Memorial Days in our lives.
They hang out with supermodels afterwards that show them how to perm.
Yeah.
See, that's what I want to see. I want to see, give me 10 supermodels from around the world, get them to the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, let them eat, let them win, and then watch them retch. Right there. You know, it's to me now that would be a sport.
It's a new sport.
Who eats first? Who eats first and who goes first?
With the spelling bee kids, we should put them in jerseys. They should have sponsors.
Well, yeah, why not? Well, but the problem with it is, here's a good one. We could have it sponsored by. No, wait a minute. No. I was going to go there. I was right there. I was sitting right
so
on
close to blowing the show in the first 12 minutes. There's a career killer right there. So
okay,
close.
here's what we do.
12 minutes in, I just pissed my career away.
Here's what
we.
Marjorie Taylor Greene becomes the first sponsor.
Yeah, you had it. You were so close. It could have happened for you.
Spell mom, M-O-M. See if they can spell it.
Right.
Okay.
Spell crazy, C-R-A-Z.
Spell crazy, Politics. There you go. That takes care of that right now. All right, Joe, so we've gone from that. So I come to you now because you're up now. First thing, right on the top, go.
Well, what my hot take of the week?
Go ahead.
That we're allowing a guy, a South Florida retiree, not using the court system to scream the same shit he would scream in a bagel shop, and we give him airtime as if it's actual news. I mean, at some point, when do people let Donald Trump just drift off into the sunset?
Well, now wait a minute. Let's make sure, because you didn't say his name. You're talking about Michael Avenatti, correct?
Yeah, well, it's the same thing. I mean, I wrote about Avenatti yesterday, and because it's not limited to left or right, you got to be careful in these world. I mean, here's my deal. Anybody who is hungry and thirsty to be a constant guest on cable news, whether you swing left or swing right, those are the people you stay away from. And it wasn't that long ago that people thought Avenatti should run for president. And it was like, what the fuck? I mean, what are you thinking of? I mean, what qualifications does this guy have? He represented a stripper in an easy case to win, and that makes him qualify for president. And you want to know why our politics are a mess in this country? I mean, come on.
Well,
all
one
right?
of the
And what's worse is that if you conducted a 5-minute search of this guy, you would find out he's left a trail of creditors in Newport Beach. That makes him a presidential candidate. But that just goes to show you how screwed up not just our politics are, but how our media is. Because this guy was a guest every single night on 2 or 3 shows.
He was.
He did the car wash every night. He was put out there as someone of substance. He had no substance. Zero. And then this dumb shit tries to shake down Nike, of all people. Nike, who's been shaking down college coaches for 40 years.
That's a great point.
This guy's going to shake down Nike. And then, on top of all of it, and I say this as an Italian guy who was part of his background is representing gangsters, he's bawling like a baby in court because he's getting 30 months. Nobody cries in court when you get 30 months. You take the time like a man, you smile, and you do your time. He's crying like a baby. Turn around and say, 30 months? Give me 60. Give me 60 months. Don't give me 30.
Look out. Casale has crashed. Very first show. He's gone. He's left the... When are
Well,
you
you know what?
look? You're a rich guy. Why don't you get a holder for that damn pad? You know why don't you get an easel, a stand? You're a rich guy. Go out and get some. Go out and get some equipment, will you?
$30 on eBay, on Amazon. You can
Hold
get
it.
a
We
nice
lost
stamp.
you, Joe. You're gone. Your audio's gone. Your audio's gone. What'd you do? What'd you hit something? Hang on. I'm going to go ahead and I'll bring Carl in here for a couple minutes. You go ahead and fix that. Okay, Carl. On this whole, because Joe brought it up about Avenatti, and this is something that this was my number one that I was going to talk about, because the Washington Free Beacon is out there. It's a newspaper and a website. They did a compilation video, and I should have had it ready here, and I didn't. I just got too busy for things. It was on our preview for the show of the media. MSNBC, CNN, all these various channels, Bill Maher, all just absolutely kissing this guy's ass from top to bottom for weeks. Oh, you're the guy Donald Trump is fearful of. Oh, you're the guy that the Republicans fear. They bought into this guy, and they just kissed his ass up and down, and now everybody's quiet. I remember at that time I called a friend of mine at one of the networks. I said, "What, are you insane? Don't you know who this guy is?" "Oh, but he makes for great clickbait, Ed." That's the problem that we have right now.
They got to get eyeballs to sell time. Very simple.
But
You
I mean,
increase your advertising rates by
you
the
can
more
get
clicks you
eyeballs
get,
to
the
sell
more eyeballs you
eyes,
get,
but
the
I
higher you're
mean,
going to charge for advertising. Simple.
but that's just it. But this guy, everybody knew, and I think Joe said it well. Everybody knew this guy was a con man, from
Yeah.
top to bottom, and they
Right.
still
That
threw
means, you
him
know what
out
that
there.
means? If he's a con man who's corrupt and hanging around with strippers, he can run for president. That's what it means. The
Well, look,
bar's been lowered. So.
it's not as if the presidency has not been filled with hookers for much longer than 2 or 3 years. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the kind of thing we got to. It's like nudge, nudge, wink, wink, kid. Come on, we can go back a long, long time, and it
Yeah.
wouldn't be the
You
first time.
know, I saw I saw an interview with Rush Limbaugh. I think it was Diane Sawyer.
I'm sorry.
This is going back 7-8 years. And yeah, and he said in his interview that he didn't really believe half the things he's talking about. He knows he's being outrageous, but he explained to her what it was. It's all about the money. It's all about getting the viewers, the listenership. You can charge more for the ads. It's very simple. And I think all of them do that. Tucker Carlson on the right and on the left, they try to make these outrageous statements to get attention in other media that's not normally their domain. And that way you get more listeners, more viewers, more advertising. Simple. More money.
We have the fourth member of our show is now weighing in. I can hear Tasso in
Mr.
the back.
Tasso.
I can hear Tasso in the background.
here.
And by the way, there's been
here.
a huge call
The
for
smartest
people.
member of the Casale family, right here.
There has been a call on
see?
social media when
Now
I
you can be
previewed
quiet,
this.
because my hands are killing me from you biting me.
People out there
He's
who
been
were
biting
saying,
me to get on the air, so he's on the air.
well, yeah, but I mean, there have been people who have been getting on social media ever since we promoted the show who have been going, come on, you got to get Tasso on the air. I said, we can't. He's got a union card now. He's going to
Yeah,
cost
nobody
us a
gives a
fortune.
crap about me. I say I'm going to be on a podcast. They go, big deal. Where's the dog? So, nobody cares.
Well,
this
but
is
if-
the way
if-
life is, right, Tasso? Nobody cares.
But if anybody knows, and it's funny, Carl, this would be a great bit for you to talk about, and I'll bet you that as a comic you could do this, because what Joe has been through with Tasso has been a story which has taken on a life of its own. Joe rescued Tasso from New Orleans when he was abandoned after the storm, and brought him in and given him a beautiful life. And the poor guy wound up. Joe, you don't mind if I tell the story? You okay?
No.
Okay. Tasso wound up with heartworm, which was probably left over from New Orleans. So Joe's getting him treated, and his neighbors, I mean, the people, these damn condo commandos have made his life miserable. Joe, you take it from there. I mean, what you've been through with the condo commandos on this, I mean, you ought to get a medal. And I quite frankly think that Tasso should be able to nibble on the ankles of every single one of these clowns in your condo board. It's ridiculous.
Well, they filed a grievance against me. I had like a 3-month hearing. I mean, if I killed somebody, I would have had more freedom than I would have had the last 3 months.
Hey, back up a little.
So
I want to
we
see
had
your face.
install
Back up.
a
Hey,
security camera.
back up a
in
little. I
the
want to
house.
see your face. Back up a little bit. I want to see your face. Kind of thing.
We
There
had
you
to
go.
install
Okay.
a security camera in the house because we had to track the dogs barking. So we're tracking the dogs barking an average of 27 seconds a day. Go ahead, bark now. You got 27 seconds. 27 seconds to bark. And we had to bring all of this information to the condo meeting So what ends up happening is 2 days before my quote sentencing end quote, I dumped this on the condo commandos. So they call the neighbor, and they, I asked the neighbor, "How's the dog doing?" "Well, the dog's barking all the time." And they said, "Well, guy's got a videotape that shows the dog's barking 27 seconds a day." "Oh, he's been much better." So I go to the meeting, and everybody's being nice to me. That's when I knew that this thing the worm kind of turned, But yeah, it was like he's been sick for 5 months. 3 of these months of going through this, it was just hell. And now the last few weeks, he's getting down off of his medication, so he's been better, and he's actually magically barked less. But it's just it was kind of a good Seinfeld show and a bad Seinfeld show. It was all the funny stuff that you can glean from condo living in South Florida, and then all the bad stuff in the sense of people who really should have more of a life than they project, and they don't. I mean, we live in a country club community. Okay, you survived COVID. You're worried about an 18-pound dog barking. I mean, seriously. You have neighbors. You're getting emails every week from neighbors saying, "Sorry, so and so died of COVID. Their service is such and such a day. You can zoom in."
But that damn dog in Casale's apartment.
And you're worried about the damn dog barking. But I mean, that just tells you, that tells you where life is. I mean, it is what it is.
It sounds like the dog should be on the condo board so he can bark at all the other residents to give them a hard time.
And here's the best part of it. I got invited to a 4th of July pool party. So I said, "Listen, I don't go anywhere without the dog because I don't want to leave the dog barking and start a whole war again." "Oh, no, you can bring the dog." Wait a second. You wanted to throw the dog out of here 3 weeks ago. Now I can bring him to a party. So I bring him to the party, okay? And the dog likes all other dogs and people, but he especially likes the food spread. So he sees this spread of food, and I could see if I let my hand off this leash, this dog is going to do a Michael Phelps right into the onion dip, right? So I just kind of let the leash a little loose just to kind of freak him a little bit, and he kind of did the sprint toward the onion. You never saw old people move so fast to protect onion dip in your life because they thought the dog was going to do a splash in. But it was all fine, like it was no big deal. It was just programming for 3 months. But in a way, it really pissed me off because it really turned our lives upside nose.
Well, that's the biggest thing. I mean, it's we laugh about it, and Carl, I know that good comics, you guys got tons of material on this stuff, and condo boards in South Florida especially. But I mean, it's a terrible thing when people feel that they have to exert this kind of force and authority on somebody simply because of a dog. But you have people who run these condo boards who have no idea what they're doing. They're just doing it basically to spend time and be a big wheel. And I hate to bring this into it, but then you've got it at condo boards, unfortunately, in places like the condo in Surfside, where these people aren't engineers and they're out here making decisions on a building. But I want to leave that for another time because.
But you know what I found out? What's fascinating, when you get into these things, and I lived here for 30 years, I never had a problem with anybody, so I have no understanding of condo law or anything like that. Then you find out when you talk to some condo lawyers that in South Florida, in the state of Florida, there are more pending lawsuits against condo associations than the next 24 states combined. And you go, whoa, it's pretty wild. It just shows you how prevalent all this stuff is, And it kind of blows you away when you think about it. But that's the stuff we deal with living in these kind of communities.
Carl, you ever had a problem with that?
I was just about to say, I just won, not a condo war with my board because I have a hedge. I live in a townhouse in North Miami Beach, and I've got a hedge that they've been cutting. I've been here for like 18 years.
Ooh,
a hedge. A hedge. In front of they've always cut it. And then it went up to the second floor, and then they're sending me notices that I've got to cut the hedge. But wait a minute, for 18 years, the condo board has been, oh, no, you got to cut the hedge. And we went back and forth. When the maintenance people came around, I told the guy, here, $10, cut my hedge. He cut my hedge. And that was that, easy. Just avoid a lot of hassle with the condo board. I could have faulted them and said, no, you've been doing this for 18 years. Oh, no, but technically it's on your property. Yeah, but you've been doing this for 18 years, so it's implied that you've been taking care of this. Suddenly, I got to take care of the hedge in front of my house.
See, people don't realize this, I think, if they don't live in South Florida. I just saw relatives yesterday that I haven't seen in a long time, and they're from the north. And I told them some of the stories that I've had with condo boards, and they said, people don't do this, really. I said, yes, they don't understand it. I mean, living in South Florida, I think it's probably like a 75% chance you're going to wind up with a condo board somewhere or some kind of association. And they're going to come after your kids, your dog, your car, where you parked, if you wash your car, how you wash. I mean, I've had it. I'm looking, quite frankly, to after we leave where we are now, it'll be a house somewhere in the mountains, and I'm walking away from associations forever.
Yeah,
But anyway,
I painted a fence, just a little gate that goes to where my air conditioning unit is. It was a couple of shades off from what they had painted the rest of the fencing, so they gave me a hard time about that a couple of years ago. Just because it was but it's only a couple of shades off. No, you have to use this paint, blah, 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 blah. Fine, just give me the paint, and I'll how to repaint the fence.
what is the worst part about living in South Florida? If you think about it.
The heat.
Well,
Yeah, the heat at this stage of my life. I moved down here because of the heat, and now I can't deal with the heat as much. The 10 months of 85 plus degree days, they've actually gotten to me more than anything else now.
yeah, I'm
It's
done.
definitely the heat.
About 10 o'clock this morning, I had to go out. A bulb burnt out on my headlight on my car. So when I got a new bulb, 5-minute job. I just had to replace the bulb. But as I was replacing the bulb, it fell down into the car, and I had to hunt for it. I had to go underneath the car, take out some screws. So what would have been a 5-minute job turned into a 25, 30-minute job. And at the end, because it was so freaking hot, I had to take a nap. I had to take a nap.
Yeah,
From the heat.
exactly.
Everybody,
I take a
it's
20
the same
minute
thing.
snooze because I felt drained from the heat. Just
I
to
hear
do a
everybody
little work
say,
on my car.
oh, as you get older, you don't like the cold. Hell with that. As I get older, I want the cold. Are you kidding? Every time it comes down here, there are those of us who say that when the temperature
Yeah,
drops into the
sure.
40s, bring it on. I want a little more of it. But all we get right now, I mean, and you hate to say, well, I could say this. When I was a kid, 7,000 years ago,
When I was a kid, young man.
it wasn't, I swear it wasn't this hot in South
No,
Florida.
not this sustained period for sure.
I just swear it wasn't even close. But lately it is, for some reason, and that's why I can't stand it. I want to go someplace where it's cold, and then I'm going to be just fine. By the way, I know that Carl, you're not a sports guy, right?
No, I'm not a sports guy. Sorry.
Not at all.
I'd like to watch sports. So football, I don't really know minutia and stuff about sports.
Okay. Well, there's because now we have the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, and people are whining and screaming that because of what people have done in Georgia politically now, that they don't want to go to the All-Star Game. People are saying we shouldn't see, because now it's in Colorado, of course. And Joe and I have talked about this a little bit. I don't know about
I know that. Especially in Colorado, I know that.
right. Well, Joe's a huge Yankees fan. If you couldn't tell already, you can see it. He has it tattooed on his chest on a regular basis. Before Carol joins us, I just want to say that I could really, really, absolutely, and undeniably care less about the baseball All-Star Game. I don't.
Just to give you an idea, the last baseball game I went to was when Sammy Sosa was having the home run derby with McGuire. What was his name?
Mark McGuire. My God, you're old.
Yeah, that was the last time I went to a baseball game. I took my son because I knew it was a big thing. So I took my son to Mark McGuire, whatever team he was playing for. That was the last time I went to a baseball
Let's just stay here.
Well, the nice thing about it is we get to segue, because I don't have to talk baseball for a while. I can actually talk the sport that I love at this point, because over the years I have managed to interview tens of thousands of people, and it's always great when I walk into somebody and we start to talk and we have a like mind when it comes to certain sports. People who know me, who read my social media, know that I am a monstrous hockey fan. I used to be a big football and a baseball fan and a motorsports fan when I grew up, but in later years I've become a huge hockey fan. And our special guest here today is also a huge hockey fan. Unfortunately, she is not a hockey fan of of well, okay. See, here's the problem. Neither one of us can actually. I can't say anything now because my team sucked it in the playoffs this year and didn't make it. Her team didn't even make it this year. So now we get to commiserate together in doing this, and that's the beautiful part about it. I have interviewed her many times on different television shows over the years. She is. I'm trying to say exactly. I consider her a marvelous economist because she knows so more about the economy and business and small business than anybody that I have ever met over the years. And she's also an author. We'll talk about her book in a moment. And she's from Chicago, so I gotta like her right there. It's been a long time since I've had her on a show, so it's a pleasure to welcome Carol Roth into the show today because Carol has been here for many years. And Carol, why don't I see you?
Come on, behave yourself.
You've disappeared.
Behave yourself. Stay
There
right here.
she is.
And I'm wearing my Chicago Blackhawks jersey, so there's or sweatshirt. So that's the perfect introduction. I literally I made you look like a truth teller, Ed. So
You did, but it almost looks like a Cleveland Browns jersey from here.
nah, come on.
Because I can't because I've got the graphics sitting in there right now. Let's go ahead. I see. Oh, there you go. Okay, now we can see it. Very nice. Very nice. I apologize. How have you been? Been a long time.
I've been crazy busy. You know, I had a busy pandemic. I wrote a book, so that was my some people had other kinds of pandemic babies. I birthed a book.
And the birth of the book that you've had, and I know that you're out there right now promoting it. We are definitely going to talk about it. It is The War on Small Business, How the Government Used the Pandemic to Crush the Backbone of America. You do know, of course, that simply by saying that, you are going to engender a lot of controversy because there are people who will say that what happened had to be done, and it wasn't like the government actually trying to destroy the economy, right? I mean, you do know that you're going to get that pushback right away.
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing. I've gotten so much great feedback from people who've actually read the book that it's incredibly nonpartisan. But part of the case that I make is that we actually didn't have lockdowns. We had targeted lockdowns that were based not on data or science, but on political clout and connections. And that was primarily borne by the small business owners. So we were not all in this together. The stock market was propped up. The big businesses did gangbusters. And at the same time, the small business owners got a fraction of the compensation that these big guys did. So not enough to compensate them for the subjugation of their property rights. So anybody who wants to make the argument that we needed lockdowns, I don't even have to have the liberty or lockdown discussion because it doesn't matter. We didn't do either. And we didn't do right by those that were targeted. And that's the government picking winners and losers and enabling this historic wealth transfer from Main Street to Wall Street in the trillions of dollars is really the area that everybody should be concerned about. If you're not in the club, and there are very few people who are, you should be very concerned about this.
Isn't it? And I think what you brought out is a good point. I'm going to bring the guys in here in a minute to talk about this as well. But when you brought up the phrase, we are all in this together, which is all we heard from the very beginning, another marvelous Madison Avenue marketing phrase, which was absolute bullshit from the very start. It's like telling us that Santa Claus actually started with a red jacket somewhere in the North Pole when it was actually Coca-Cola who started the whole thing. We've seen this before. We were never in this together because our government was split down the middle when it comes to believing in conspiracy theories, anti-vaxxers, and wanting to destroy the little guy, and the other side that said we have to go ahead and prop these people up and we have to throw our money here instead of throwing it into things that actually are worthwhile in saving lives from the beginning. And I think we can actually take this down to something even smaller. When you look at this whole issue of we are in this together, go right to the idiocy of masks. Start there. Something as simple as something just to put on your face, and that destroyed this country in many ways. And that leading to all this has split us to a point I don't know if we're going to recover from anytime soon, Carol.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So I, obviously spent a lot of time researching this over the past year plus time frame. And I have a part in the book, the beginning, where I kind of talk about how all of these policies unfolded. And what many people forget is that people were out buying masks. A lot of people wanted to use masks, and we were told by the government and by all of the major media outlets not to do that. It was not necessary. In some cases, that it would actually harm you. We have a piece that we quoted from NBC News that literally made fun of the president at that point in time, saying that, oh, he would get very caught up in these things, like these small details, like wearing masks. And he would say, well, why do doctors wear them if they don't work? And I mean, you can actually, hear Trump saying that kind of thing, ha, ha, ha. And then 3 weeks later, they're changing their positions. So I kind of walk through all of the mistakes that were made at the federal government level, at the media level, and then down to the government and local levels, just one after another. But really, as you said, we're not in this together. Just look at the different outcomes. 7 tech companies gained $3.4 trillion in value. It was a record year for initial public offerings. It was a record year for SPACs, which many people probably have never even heard of before. So if you were having access to capital, it was flowing, but it was coming at the expense of retirees and savers who couldn't earn any sort of yield to be able to get their fixed income. So we really saw on multiple levels, both by government mandate and then by what the Federal Reserve did, this just huge historic transfer of wealth and the continued squashing of wealth creation opportunities for the average American in this country. And again, as I said, this is a nonpartisan issue. I don't care what party. We're all part of the Green Party. We all want people to be able to create and retain wealth.
Thank you.
And so, that's the part that if you really take a step back, and I talk through the thesis of not just the last year, but I take us back, 20 plus years to see how this all unfolded. A lot of people are really surprised when they actually take a look at the whole thing, at what really happened.
Is it not fair to say, though, Carol, that part of what happened here is you do have, and some of the breakdowns here, because you had the medical experts who were telling people that you don't have to wear masks, and then, of course, they moved and said you have to. That is a medical evolution, because that will happen sooner or later. When you have something that nobody knows exactly what the problem with it is, you are going to evolve from a spot of thinking,
but
okay.
It wasn't a medical evolution.
Sure it
was a political. No, it was a political evolution, because they didn't have any new data. The data and the research that had been done, they had access to before any of this happened. Fauci actually came out, and we have the citations for it, and said the reason why they told people not to get masks is they were worried they were going to take up all the supply and take them away from the healthcare providers. So he admit that they intentionally lied. But eventually they never got back to a point where that wasn't an issue. So instead they said, well, we're still low on supply, so just make your own at home. They could have just been honest with us from the beginning and said that back in February and not had the flip-flopping. So it was a change in political stance because they quote unquote thought we were idiots that created all of this levels, different levels of distrust, and really created the politicization of this whole thing.
Did they lie, or were they simply trying to do the best possible thing under the conditions that they had and under knowing what they had? Because if
they lied because they changed the position to exactly what they could have done in February. They could have said, we're in a situation where we need these for the healthcare providers. We need the stronger ones. So if you want to get one, here's how to make one at home, or here's the ones that we suggest.
Well, because they knew we didn't have it, because the administrations had basically left us with absolutely not enough gear in order to get any sort of a pandemic treated whatsoever. So
they sent it in the beginning of February. They sent 17 million, I think it was. Actually, I don't know the exact numbers in the book, but some ridiculous amount of PPE to China.
Okay, whose decision was that?
That was the Trump administration's, under Mike Pompeo.
Exactly, and there's part of what I'm saying. When we're talking about lies, this is a permeated lie that goes to a lot of people. See, I sit on the point having a medical knowledge, if you will, and coming from a medical family. I'm not a doctor. I just play one on TV. I'm not a doctor, but I study enough and I can read. And it would seem to me that this country was left with a severe depletion of any PPEs to be ready. We weren't ready for a pandemic. The previous administration had us ready and was trying to get us ready. But the Trump administration then basically helped to destroy that readiness.
Well, that's not true. We did. They had in 2019 a set of drills under the Trump administration in conjunction with 14 states called Crimson Contagion, where they did a preparedness drill for this exact scenario. I mean, it was kind of freaky, like something leaks from a lab in China and then comes to the United States, and they ran the drill. So there's no excuse for them not to have been ready for the pandemic because they ran the drills literally months before this started.
See, I think that the medical community in this sense was trying to protect us as best as they could with a depleted roster of what they had of equipment. But if we're going to talk about lies here, and I want to bring the guys in here in a second too and get their opinion on all this as well. If we're going to talk about lies, I understand we're trying to be nonpartisan, but the administration at the time lied through its teeth. At every single, there wasn't one fact that ever walked out of the White House.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as I said, I lay out the case in the book, and literally everybody is to blame. This is a nonpartisan issue. This is a systemic issue.
Good.
And it came from the fact that the early warnings were ignored. I tie that to the fact we had just signed the trade deal with China, and they probably didn't want to rock the boat with China, so they went too easy. And as I said, they helped to gather the PPE. We had the failures of the emergency use authorizations that screwed up testing. So there were in the first few months, a suppression strategy was miffed by the administration, but then once the 15 days to slow the spread came about, which again came from the Trump administration, it was taken and was ran with in a very tyrannical way by the governors. So again, like, nobody gets out unscathed here. And then Congress obviously used the crisis to just funnel money from Main Street to Wall Street. So again, this is a systemic failure. This is not a partisan failure, and this is not something you fix by we put our person in place.
And I will agree with you on the systemic failure. We've already been to that. Okay, so let's bring the guys in here now, and I want to get there. Joe meet Carol, Carol meet Joe, Carl meet Carol, Carol meet Joe.
Hi, Carol.
There you go.
Congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
And let's sell copies. I want everybody to go out and buy a copy. Damn it, right now. I don't care where you are right now, because the book is available where you get your fine books, which would be any place. It's available through Amazon and all the regular places, right, Carol?
Yes, but as
Okay.
I've been saying, we've been pushing people to get it through their local bookstores, through bookshop.org, which fulfills through local bookstores and independent retailers, because
Good.
part of the war on small business is people not voting with their dollars appropriately and continue to consolidate power with a handful of big companies. So as I'm a capitalist, buy wherever you want, but at least give it some extra thought. Maybe go to a local bookseller.
I think that's a great idea. And I hadn't even thought about that with the war on small business. You're exactly right. Stop ordering from Amazon and go to a bookstore somewhere instead of, actually get off your ass and go.
Well, you don't even have to. Bookshop.org. You can do the same thing online, right?
Okay. Yeah, but get out and walk. I mean, that's the funniest thing. Carl, I'm gonna come to you on this, because with what Carol is saying here, and we're all, I bring it back to the whole point where she started, and she's right. When they started this, we're all in this together. We never were. We're still not all in this together. So and you as a performer, you especially, you got hammered in this, and you're a small businessman, because you work on the ships, you work in the clubs, you work in places.
Work on ships.
Well, you can't work on ships anymore.
Right, for the time being, that's coming back slowly. But as a business owner, I made some adjustments when I set myself up for Zoom. So I bought everything I needed to do Zoom shows. I also bought my own sound equipment so I could do outdoor shows. I have a nice battery-operated system, so I can pitch a country club or a community. I'm doing an outdoor show, which I did several. I think I did many outdoors. So that was the adjustment I made as a business owner.
Well, but how are you as a small businessman, as a small business person right now? You were affected. You had to lose. I know people who lost their entire businesses, people who lost their homes, lost their cars, lost their families because of this right now. Who do you blame?
Yeah. There's so many different factors. It's such a complicated issue. But getting back to the masks, I remember with the masks, I remember there was conspiracy. People saying you can't wear a mask because you'll pass out if you wear a mask. I don't recall doctors passing out in the operating room from wearing masks. And I do recall also that we did have pandemic response teams that had been set up by previous administrations to handle the spread of viruses and target them early on and recommend what we need to do. prevent them from being brought into the country. I do recall all those epidemic response teams were all reduced. Some of them were assimilated into other parts of the government, but the key people involved were let go.
And we're still at the point where they're not coming back. Joe, you're technically a small businessman, if you will, but your business was not nearly as affected as everybody else was, I believe. But you and I have had these discussions over and over again, exactly what Carol is talking about. We were never in this together. This country is still separate. We are still cut right down the middle. We are not getting any better. We are not coming together. And honestly, I don't see us coming together. I don't see us coming together for at least the next 2 years, maybe 5 years, Joe. I think this is going to become some kind of a systemic, endemic situation where, thanks to the politics, we're split maybe for a generation.
Well, look, we have one political party actively trying to end democracy as we know it in this country. And they're using their news channel as their propaganda tool. Look, we can go back and forth and saying, don't make it partisan, this and that. But every major employee, executive, and on-air person at Fox News got the vaccine. They're going on television every day telling their audience not to get the vaccine. So now you're asking citizens who are trying to work for a living and are trying to make ends meet, who hear information in dribs and drabs, to sift through all of this and make intelligent decisions. It's a catastrophic failure. All of my friends in the restaurant business were told they were going to have this restaurant survival program and they were going to only have to fill out these forms and they will get grants and save their business. It all ran out of money. It all fell apart. So all of these people are losing their businesses for doing nothing wrong. They followed all the rules and they were told it doesn't work.
Go ahead, Carol.
It is a cataclysmic failure of our government to protect us.
You had a chuckle at Fox News.
Everybody shares in that. And it's still that way. We still don't have a lot of clarity.
Go ahead.
South Florida, there are places you can go where you have to wear masks, don't have to wear masks. We have to deal with the Delta variant. We're not getting accurate information on how, if you took the Moderna vaccine, whether you need a booster or not. Pfizer is saying you need a booster. There's this confluence of information and misinformation flying around, and you're asking people to be able to decipher it all.
Look, but wait a minute. Hang on a sec. There's nothing here to decide. Come on. Let's stop this right now. You want me to take a shot? Fine. I went out and got my shot. I don't care. You give me two? Fine. You want me to take another one? Fine. I'll take another one. You want me to wear a mask inside? I don't care, because I don't want to die. And that's really it. I have no fear about taking a vaccine. Look,
neither do I. But what do you do with the person who doesn't want to be vaccinated, who has no problems entering public spaces or school board zones, or get involved in school boards and trying to get teachers fired? It's a whole shit show, Ed.
Well, but here's what Carol is doing.
There's no leadership. If you happen to live in a state like Florida, who has a Donald Trump wannabe running for office in 2024, we are completely in the shit show.
I got to bring Carol in here because I think she's about to explode any second now. But look, Joe makes some very good points here, Carol. And your book, you're trying to explain this to people in very factually based, simple terms, which is brilliant. I know you. We've talked many times. That's what you're good at. You can break things down and make it easy for anybody to understand. But will they? I don't see a great groundswell of people trying to understand this.
So people are definitely not interested in understanding. And I think, Joe's a perfect example of somebody who has his worldview, which is fine. I have no problem. That's, your worldview, but is assuming that everything that you are saying is sort of correct and that there's no sort of other side to the equation. And I think that's part of the problem. There's a lot of nuance involved here. And because everything's become so politicized, the reality is that Florida has done very well vis-a-vis places like New York that had strict lockdowns, but you're viewing it through a political lens because you're associating the governor with Trump. And I think that kind of a dialogue isn't helpful. I'm somebody who believes in personal liberties. I got the vaccine. That was a personal choice. That was the right choice for me. But I'm fine if somebody else doesn't want to take the vaccine, because that's the whole reason I got the vaccine, was to protect myself. So if somebody else wants to take on that level of risk, that doesn't affect me, because again, I've got the vaccine. So I feel like we need to have more ability to have nuance in the conversation, and not view everything sort of through a political and a multiple party lens, and also understand that systemically the government is so broken that looking to them for leadership on this is sort of the first mistake that we have, that we should be able to synthesize and take differing information, because the reality is that a lot of this is changing real time. They don't know the information. We have shown that they lie about the information. So it is incumbent upon all of us to not trust what we hear from the media and the government just wholesale, but take the different pieces of information, assess them, and then make the right decisions for you. And I don't think it's fair to throw, I appear on Fox Business. I've written op-eds for Fox News. There are Democrats who appear there, different things. So because maybe one person has a point of view, I don't think we can condemn the entire network or every viewer, through that lens. I think that's part of what's missing in this, kind of nuanced discussion.
Okay, we want to stick the show to an hour. We only got about 8 minutes left. Joe, I want you to go ahead and respond.
No, I think there is nuance, but I think you also have a situation where, how do you explain nuance when one network is telling their citizens not to be vaccinated when they themselves have been vaccinated?
But who's telling people not to be vaccinated? I mean, who's telling people not to be vaccinated?
Well, Tucker Carlson every night is telling people they don't need to be vaccinated. Yet his whole network and all of their executives and their CEO has
is he literally saying you
Absolutely.
Don't need it, or is he presenting information to say that you should evaluate this?
No, he is presenting information saying you don't need to be vaccinated, that the government shouldn't be telling you to be vaccinated.
Okay, but again, those are two things. The government shouldn't tell you that you need this, and saying you shouldn't do it are two different things. And again, that's the nuance in the situation. Again, I don't watch the show, so I can't speak to that, but I can tell you, being in the media and having been on all the networks, every network has a point of view, and a lot of them have personalities that say all kinds of bad things, which is why we need to empower people to make decisions that are outside of just traditional.
Okay, let me interject here. Is it not at the point where, and Carol, the point you bring up is one that I've been pushing for a long time. We have all of these networks. The shows that we're talking about here, Tucker Carlson, Don Lemon, the morning show with Nathan Joe,
right?
Whichever they are.
Right.
These are not news shows.
No,
these are
they're
opinion shows based with opinion guests and experts that walk in, and experts who say, I know everything. Bullshit. No, you don't. So what you're talking about here, and can we agree on this, that, and maybe we can, maybe we can't, but if we're talking to smart people here, you don't just get all your news from Fox. You don't get it from CNN. You don't get it from MSNBC. And I've said over and over again that if you want news, you go to 6:30 at night on the East Coast, CBS News, ABC News, NBC News. It is a 30-minute newscast. It delivers news in an unbiased situation.
No, it certainly does not.
Yes, it does.
It does.
I
I literally have citations in the book where it's completely not unbiased. They have a very specific lens. What I tell everyone, gather from a lot of different sources, and also the decentralized sources. There are a lot of smaller outlets now that are doing a really good job of digging in. Look at a range of opinions and do some digging in, but like to go to any one news source. I mean, our national news, to think that ABC and NBC and CBS aren't biased today. I mean, they're completely biased.
But you see, again, go ahead, Carl. Go ahead.
No, I personally prefer. I watch all different media, but I also like BBC because it's in their charter. They can't be biased. They can't be partisan. British Broadcasting.
It still comes down to you have to be able to choose, because can we all just agree, maybe we can agree on this, that there are certain outlets that are out there that are absolutely, undeniably, completely full of bullshit. I mean, and they are cable outlets, they are OTT, they are fake from top to bottom. They are loaded with opinionators and commentators who do nothing but point in one direction. And if you listen to them, you're not getting any fact.
But opinion doesn't always mean, and I think this is where, again, you're like conflating an entire group of people like in overreach. Like I appear on shows, so if I've been on every network. So when I'm on Fox, I'm full of whatever, and when I'm on MSNBC, I'm not. Like I don't understand that. Like listen to the sources, do your research, and make decisions.
No, but that's what I'm saying. But there are outlets out there who will not bring in someone like you, or someone who has done the research, or someone who is knowledgeable. They will bring in people who are sitting on the fringe of any real
right now, that happens to be MSNBC and CNN, but years ago it wasn't. So you tell me. I don't know.
No, I agree. I agree.
OAN and OAN and Max News aren't biased, is that what we're saying, or InfoWars?
No, I'm just saying. My point is there are different people who appear on different networks. The networks, they have different programs. Each one has a different point of view. Some guess their opinion, some guess their news. Like you have to go through and dig and look at individual things. We can't just look at everything. I mean, this is our problem, is that, again, no nuance, no individuality. We just want to take something big, lump it all together, and label it.
Joe, what do you think? I mean, I think that's fair.
No, that is fair. I mean, look, CNN and MSNBC don't get off the hook. I mean, they spent 2 years trying to tell you Michael Avenatti was someone of substance.
Right.
So, I mean, you don't need any more than that. I think what happens when you have a national health crisis, it is great that we want to get more nuance and all of that. But when you have a national health crisis, we have to have somebody we believe in. We have to find some source. Because people, first of all, when this first started, people were too scared to be shopping around like they were going to Nordstrom Rack, going through the racks looking for a deal. They were looking for some centralized voice, someone they could trust. And you had 50% of the country said we could trust Donald Trump, and 50% of the country said they could not. And so we were in a situation where, okay, let's trust the president. President's filling us with a ton of misinformation. Where do we go from there? Well, we go to Fauci. Okay, we'll go to Fauci. Fauci comes across as a grandfatherly, trusting figure. We can trust him. But then you get into here's where the nuance takes place. When science dictates changes, in the opinionated world of cable news, change means you're wrong. So now we get both sides arguing over the change, and is he lying? Is he telling the truth? And you as a viewer, non-media person, non-person with peripheral, entry into the media, is listening to all this and saying, who do I believe? Do I send my child to school with a mask? What if they won't? Do I remote learn? Do I not remote learn? And the problem we had in the first 4 months of this pandemic is we didn't have a centralized base of information. We were getting thrown so much stuff our way, and it was so much nonsense that people started drifting toward where they felt most comfortable.
Well, but that's part and parcel because of the breakup of media in this country, and the fractured nature of media in this country. Because instead of where you used to have 4 or 5 sources, or you had real newspapers to read at, you now have 4,000 or 5,000 sources that you can go to, and you can individually find the one that fits what you need, and you can say, that's the truth. That's part of the problem.
The one that made you feel the most comfortable. And sometimes being the most comfortable wasn't giving you the most accurate information.
Right, go ahead.
I mean, how many times did we read someone on social media write about, I'm not wearing a mask, I'm not taking a vaccine, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. And then 3 weeks later, his son or daughter writes a social media post that says, oh, my father and mother, they're dead. I mean, how many times did we see that during this entire pandemic? And I look at this from afar as someone, look, I got the vaccination. That was fine. But I'm saying, how many people did we lose because they were just completely uninformed, or chose not to be informed, or chose to be informed by the people that made them most comfortable confirming their initial views.
Well, that's all part of it.
That's
It's what
something that's a tough pill to swallow.
it's what makes people comfortable at this point. Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, I mean, I would just offer that the people looking to the centralized source for truth is part of the problem. You have to remember that before the government started making insane decisions, people, when they heard that there was an issue abroad, they started taking measures on their own. People are not stupid. They went out and they started buying masks, which is what caused Fauci and the secretary, or the Human Health Secretary Alex Azar, and some of these other people to come out and say stop buying masks, and started causing that expert level confusion. So I agree that that people were it's at some point there was perhaps these bad central places that gave misinformation, but I think that part of the problem is that we're looking for somebody to tell the truth, and we shouldn't be looking in that direction. We should be making decisions based on
Hold on,
people.
Well, where do we look then? I mean, if we shouldn't be looking there to tell us the truth, where do we look?
I mean, I talked to. Did you not talk to trusted doctors in your community?
Sure.
Well, there you go.
Okay.
I trust a doctor in my community who I have a relationship more than the guy who's like the government hack who we know has lied to us. And I think that's the thing, is people need to take more responsibility and stop with this government for everything and politicize everything nonsense. And the people taking that level of responsibility would have made a lot more sense. We would have had people more focused if the government didn't politicize this whole thing on protecting the vulnerable. The reality is, I got COVID in February 2020 before anybody even knew it was the thing. Nobody panicked until like a month later, but because I wasn't in the vulnerable group. But if they had focused on just the vulnerable group, which by the way, we had that data, but it was obfuscated by the circus of everybody focusing on the media thing. And that's part of the issue.
Well, but see, and again, it comes down to responsibility. You used a great word there. And to me, there is been a lack of responsibility across the board, top to bottom, because nobody wants to take responsibility for, I made a mistake, I got it right, we need to do this, we need to change this, we need to do that. And again, I know I'm going to go right back to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, which has the biggest bully pulpit in the world, and nothing that came out of the mouth of the President of the United States at that time was based on any fact whatsoever. It was nonsense. And when you have that, he refused completely to take any responsibility. Look, all you have to do is say, I was wrong. Okay, would have made a huge difference.
He would never say he was wrong.
Well,
remember, he tried to change the path of a hurricane with a Sharpie. Remember that.
He's right. And I think
he didn't want to admit he was wrong.
I think that's the biggest issue, Carol. We've got to find people who are willing to take the responsibility to say, okay, look, we didn't quite get it right at the beginning, but I'm going to take the heat for this because I was the one who did this, and our organization did this, and now let's push ourselves forward.
I guess that
it'll never happen.
From a response standpoint, and so there are sort of two pieces. And again, I've researched this incredibly deeply. There was the prevention of it coming to the U.S., which was a federal thing. We tried to shut down flights early on. We were told that it was racist and xenophobic. So there was a lot of pushback in terms of things that would have potentially, or maybe not, made a difference, but at least they would have been these appropriate strategies. The administration dropped the ball on PPE, and they're the ones that came out with the 15 days to slow the spread plan. So that was the federal dropping the ball, but then they handed it over to the states, which was the appropriate thing to do. You can't have a national response to something like this. It really needs to be managed on more of a local level. And because obviously every state is different, and that's really how we're structured.
Well, but I think you can't leave your hands off, though. That was the one thing that I disagree with. And you just pointed this out, the federal government is there at the beginning and handing it off to the states. But the federal government under the Trump administration basically did this, and they walked away completely. Now, don't you think there needed to at least be some hands-on help? Because that's one of the bigger issues where the state said the government didn't help us.
They worked with Congress, and the help from Congress was not helping small business. So again,
that's a disaster.
It's trying to say, well, if we had just had our guy in there, this would have all been better. And again, it's a systemic issue. And that's the bigger problem. I don't think if we had a different person there, we would have had individual pieces of it different. Maybe I don't know, do we not get the lockdowns if we have somebody else in there? I don't know. That was done at the state level. So I don't know. But the bigger point, the bigger takeaway is that this is systemic and this has been going on a lot longer than any particular one party administration or multiple party administration.
Guys, can we agree on that? Go ahead, Carl.
Okay, I was just going to say what I think led to a lot of the misinformation up front was the nature of science, because science changes with the research. They made new discoveries about the disease, and that's why it was all different misinformation. They kept changing.
But it actually did. I mean, that's the thing. It didn't change. And again, I've done hundreds of sources of research. The SARS, they published the genetic sequence at the beginning of January of 2020. So we knew that. And the information on the vulnerability in terms of the older population, we knew in the beginning of March. None of that changed. The science on masks, literally there was no new scientific information that came out. None.
It's fair.
Okay.
That's it. And so it was the politics of it that changed, and unfortunately, that is the big issue, which I think we're kind of like dancing around the issues. That's the big issue: is the politicization of everything, which is happening on both party sides, and as Joe said, in part from the divided media. And we're letting it seep down and taking the nuance out of the discussion.
Well, let's not dance then. Let's just say it flat out. We have right now a completely dysfunctional government system. Whether you want to take it from Trump or Biden, we still have all sorts of issues that are not being addressed properly. We have a completely dysfunctional Senate at this point, and Congress, which is completely split down the middle over some absolute nonsense. To not want to be involved in a discussion factor, at least in some sort of an investigation into January the 6th, is criminal. For somebody to say, oh, we don't need to know anything. We knew everything we need to know. No, you don't. That's a lie. And then for the various media outlets to still have us come out and say that this one's got it right and this one's got... No, they all have an issue. But to me, again, it still comes down to these panel shows. And here we are doing a panel show. So, but the fair thing about it is here, we're being honest about it. I mean, because we're not sitting here covering up or basically trying to get somebody to elect us, if you will. So the biggest issue that we have right now is people need to understand there is fact, there is opinion. There's fact, there's your cut. Right there, and we've got too many people who have agreed too much on opinion, and that's what's thrown this country into an absolute mess right now.
No, I think the biggest danger we have in the country right now is that people who actually know better are intentionally saying stupid things to appeal to an element to either retain power or get into power.
On all sides. On all sides.
Get money. Yeah.
Right. And so what we have this sea of information that's out there, a lot of it bad, a lot of it that can be corrected by people who have the power to move opinion, but choose not to because it's not in their personal best interest to do so. And that's why we have such dysfunction in Washington. It's why we have such dysfunction almost in every area of our lives right now. And there isn't an easy way out of that. There isn't a just snap your fingers, or if you do A, B, or C, this will work out. And it's a danger time for us right now, because I see people every day writing something on social media that I know personally, and I know they know better, but they're writing it because they either have to keep a job, they're trying to attain a job, or they're trying to secure a power base. It's a tough way to go, and there aren't any easy answers to it.
Carol, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, so you've now talked about the overarching thesis of the War on Small Business, which is decentralization versus central power. What you described, whether it is in media, whether it is in government, it is human nature that the people who are seeking out power will do things that aren't in the best interest of others to secure that power. And the fight against that is decentralization. So on the corporate realm, it is small business. In the media realm, it is the creator economy. In different areas. There are different parts of decentralization in government. It's having a small government purview. And so I think you hit the nail on the head there. If we want to make sure that we don't have these centralized, big, powerful groups of people who are directing decisions versus force, control, coercion, or that have too much power, the answer is decentralization, which is why the people in power find it so threatening and why they try to kill small businesses.
So let me just ask us, and again, I love this. First show, I told myself, we're going to do an hour this time, real tight hour. Yeah, that went away. We could do 3 hours on this, and we could still be here. It's the beauty of OTT programming where we don't have to. But we have a lot more to talk about, and we'll come back another time and do it. Carol, just a quick question then for you regarding the book. Is small business coming back? Is it on a track to come back?
So, I mean, for a couple million small businesses, no, they were murdered and they're not coming back. There are a bunch of new businesses that were born in the void because a lot of stimulus money went out and people were out of work and people were trying to, find ways to make a living. But the issue is the continued barriers to making small business effective and allowing people to have the wealth creation opportunities. I mean, we have 30.2 million small businesses before COVID in this country, so it's going to take a while to get rid of all of them. But that doesn't discount the fact that there's only 10 to 15,000 big businesses. So if you lose a million or 2 million of those, that's exponentially multiples of the size of the entire big business community, and we need to preserve that. We need to shift more in that decentralized realm.
We're going to come back and do a show one day which now focuses just not on the what you're talking about, but the other side of this is there's a lot of people out there who want to work, who really want to get back to work, and they are not being allowed to go back to work because they are too old and too expensive. Because these companies are making a fortune right now. They're hiring them cheap, and they're basically just shoveling people off the side who really deserve to get jobs. I've got friends of mine who would go to work for a small business in a heartbeat, but they don't get hired. I can tell you that there's a friend of mine who actually said, I will go out and tend bar. And this is a woman who is brilliant and a master's degree. She's over 50. She can't get a job. No one will touch her.
Send me her information, her location, because I get businesses all the time looking for who are like desperate for people. So I'll see if I can help her out.
But that's what we need, more of that, because that's the bigger problem. When I hear people say we can't find enough people to work, I for whatever reason that doesn't strike me right. But you certainly know better than I do. So you're going to come back again? We didn't beat you up too bad? You're going to be all right?
I'm on all these mean channels, so obviously
I have no idea.
All kinds of posts all the time.
This is one of the toughest people I've ever met in my life, and one of the most intelligent, because Carol researches everything. Every interview we did, I found that out about her. Every single one. So I want to remind everybody again, the book is called The War on Small Business, How the Government Used the Pandemic to Crush the Backbone of America. Carol's got a lot of books out there. And also the biggest thing to do, too, is I want to make sure that everybody knows that they need to get a hold of you on Twitter, because that is your main form of communication, right? Carol, at Carol J.S. Roth, correct?
Yes, correct. If you have a warped sense of humor, that's where you can find me.
It is. Look, I'm going to be flat out about it. Carol asks questions sometimes. I go, she asked that? Now, but have you ever asked the question of which is better, DC or Marvel?
I don't know. I did a favorite superhero one about a week ago, but I haven't done I like to keep it positive, and I like to keep, better engagement versus pitting one thing versus another, unless I get in one of those moods. But I'll keep that in the back.
Come on, you do those moods all the time. Let's do that. That's what this whole show is based on. We got a lot of this country's got moods right now. Carl, do us a favor here, because tell us about where you've been, what you're doing. Go ahead, because this is now the absolute, complete, unfettered manner for you to go ahead and promote everything.
Okay, great. My website is carloscomedy.com, and I generally work clean, PG-13. So because of that, I get to do a lot of corporate events. I've got several coming up. The corporate market, the meeting planning is coming back slowly. So I've already got dates booked for the summer in South Florida doing corporate events, which is great. They also perform regularly in Fort Lauderdale at a venue called the Jungle Queen. It's been around for like over 80 years. They actually opened up last
Carol,
July.
you ever been to the Jungle Queen?
Not sure.
Fort Lauderdale Institution.
It is a hallowed institution, a big boat where people go out and then they take them to an island, and they get a big buffet, and it's like
buffet barbecue. Then there's a show.
what is it, like a steam wheel, or like an old New Orleans style steam wheeler or something?
New Orleans style boat that holds like 400 people, 450 people. But they've been selling out. I was there last night. We had about 400 people last night for a Thursday night, and a lot of tourists too. So that's a great sign.
You come down, Carol. We'll get you. We'll get you on the Jungle Queen. Believe me, it's like it used to be. If you came to South Florida, you had to go on the Jungle Queen and you had to go to the Mai Kai. The Mai Kai is now dead.
Closed. Yeah, Mai Kai closed. Yeah.
Mai Kai's gone. Storm destroyed it. That's gone forever. So now you've only got so many institutions left, and that's certainly one of them. Mr. Casale, unfortunately, I know that you don't promote anything. You just don't care. But what Joe should promote, if you go to his Facebook page, @Chef Casale, the story of Tasso, which is absolutely, Tasso the Doxy is a great story to follow. And Joe actually is a hell of a cook. And he puts a lot of his recipes up there. And
it's Italian food. It's Italian food, right?
Well, yeah, it's Italian food. What do you expect?
Italian food, Creole and Cajun food. We bake.
Nice.
Anything that can keep me from getting cited in the condo commandos, we crank it out as much as we can.
Perfect.
I test the limits of the aromas coming out of the kitchen to see who I can aggravate here.
So, Carol, I can't leave without asking you now, because you and I are both big hockey fans. We haven't touched about it. You and I think I could do a half an hour on hockey and have fun.
Ed, you're ignoring the Ranger fan in the room. And for what
I know,
here,
we are.
I should be able to discuss Rangers hockey.
I mean, you have Panarin, so I feel like that it makes you inclusive in the conversation. So
that's right.
See, but no, I don't want to include Rangers fans. I hate the Rangers. Suck. I have no love for the Rangers whatsoever.
When you spend too much time in Boston.
Carl, you got to be careful now, because when you start walking into this, a Boston fan, a Rangers fan, a Blackhawks fan, who knows where this could go? But
and they all have sticks. They have hockey sticks.
Well, yeah, that's the great thing about hockey. We all carry sticks, but it's the same thing in baseball too. But Carol, I don't know. I think my Bruins have a chance to come back next year. I think the Blackhawks got a way to go.
It's hard to say. Obviously, we had a ton of injuries this year, and that led to, not only Taves being out for the entire year, but we had a lot of people who ended up retiring. We have a lot of really good young talent. So I think it just sort of depends, how that all gets sorted out. I mean, it sounds like we're losing Duncan Keith, which is not going to be great on defense. So it could be a season or two. But we're hopeful.
You have no idea what it's like. We're hoping.
Yeah,
Joe,
but what the Blackhawks have is the best national anthem singer in sports.
Yes, Jim Cornelison is. I mean, to just come to the United Center for the singing of the national anthem is worth the price of admission alone. It's really the best. Like it's better than the entire game. It's such a wonderful thing to be a part of.
He's amazing.
See, I can't, and I'm with you. This is another conversation, but I cannot stand national anthem singers who over-affectate the anthem. And there's a lot of them. I'm not going to cast aspersions, but there's a certain one right now for a certain team that won the Stanley Cup, the Lightning, and it's just awful. I know I'll get hammered for that. The Tampa Bay fans will come and say she's wonderful, and I'm sure she's a wonderful person. She never stole a freight train, but the anthem I can't stand. I go back to, you guys have never lived until you've heard, and unfortunately he's retired now, Rene Rancourt for the Boston Bruins.
Jim Cornelison's better.
He is.
Awesome.
He is.
I mean, because Rene had Rene had a style, and it was just so all over the place, but it was perfect for Boston. And
Jim Cornelison, I mean, it's an event, and just the way everybody claps during it, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I will also have to say, I know I shouldn't say this as America, but I also really enjoy "O Canada." I think it's a really nice national anthem.
See, now you're opening up another. You've just opened up. We can. Here's the door. The door now comes open.
All right. Next time we've got half of the original 6 here. So
that's true. Next time we get into the whole thing of why we even sing the anthem at the beginning of sporting events.
You're really trying to get me in trouble here, Ed, aren't you?
Well, that's yes, absolutely. I mean, that's one of those things which I mean, I constantly look. Joe and I have sat in our share of press boxes over the year, and we've had to endure some of the worst singers in the world and the worst moments from all this. And there are people out there who say we don't need the anthem. Others say we do need the anthem. It's America. And there's okay, that's another story. So we'll get into all that. Don't worry, that'll be a real problem sooner or later. Carl, thank you so much. Carl is going to be back again. He performs again in South Florida. Joe, it's always a pleasure to see you, my friend. I know that we're always getting in trouble, and I'm glad Tasso is good. Carol missed the whole story about Carol. If you go back and watch the first half of the show, where Joe's dachshund and the absolute grief that his condo board put him through, where they griefed him about a dog who barks all the time. And Joe and I got together and technologically proved that the dog barks a total of 27 seconds a day. A day. So for like a month. And it was ridiculous to go on to. Carol, I love you. I miss you. I wish we could do this all the time. Your stuff is wonderful. And keep it up. Everybody hang tight just a minute because I'm going to close the show and then I'll come right back to everybody. But thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much for the debut of the show, and hopefully we're going to create a lot of problems. That's always what it's perfect to do. I thank everybody who's here. Great friends. Don't forget, you can catch this show again on all the podcast platforms. Just search out Ed Berliner, search out The Man in the Arena. It's all under that same banner. You can watch it again on YouTube. And also, whenever we do this show, you'll get the previews of it. And we're always on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube until they decide they want to go ahead and pull the plug on us and we make a mistake somewhere and somebody grabs us. Thanks, everybody. Have a great time. Take care of yourself. Be healthy. For everybody here, I'm Ed Berliner. Rock on, true believers. See ya.
You're still here?
Are you not entertained?
It's over.
All right, hey. All right, good job, guys. Let's just not come in tomorrow. Let's just take a day.
Go home.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Go.
That's all, folks.